We're going to switch things up just a little bit today. We're actually going to be starting off with communion, but before we do that, I wanted to introduce you guys. A lot of you guys know who he is. He's had a profound impact on my life. His name is Jay Rinne, and he's going to be talking to you guys a little bit about communion right now, setting that up. We wanted to do it a little bit different today, so he's got a couple words to share with you guys.
Thanks, Scott. So, as most of you guys know, Charlie took off and is somewhere else tonight. I think in England or something. Is that right? Scotland. Okay. So he's gone away and he trusted me with the reins. And then Kyle and I got together and we started talking and scheming and thinking about what we could do. And it was kind of like mom or dad gave us the keys to the Porsche and we were like, wow, let's see how fast this thing can go. So we started moving things around and we thought we'd just try some different stuff. But one of the things that I know about communion is that the Lord commands it of us. And I love how Charlie always says that this is an open table that we all get to engage in freely and openly. The Lord says when he's offering the elements, he says to his friends that are sitting in the room, he says, do this in remembrance of me. And I know when I come to this table in this time, there's lots of times that I come, and maybe it's my old growing up in a religious home or in a church that I felt like I had to be very somber. And I had to put all my sin before God, and then it had to be quiet, and I couldn't look at anybody. And Chris Croyce challenged my thinking on that, I don't know, maybe 6 months ago or something. And as I've stepped into the communion table more and more, I started thinking about it more in this way, and I'd like to engage you guys to consider this possibly for yourselves as well. That I'm actually maybe in this thin spiritual but also physical action of taking communion, I'm actually maybe entering into Christ's life, death, and resurrection. I'm pulling that and putting that into myself. And I get to go out of this place with his life and his death and his resurrection and new life. And so today I would like to consider, or have you guys consider, stepping into this communion place and something maybe a little bit different. Chris said it in a way that was like, this can be a celebration. Think about the early church people that watched Jesus go through his life. And then he died and resurrected, and he told them what to do, right? And they really heard him say, do this in remembrance of me. And I wonder if they just didn't say, God, remember when Jesus did this? Remember when he showed up in this place that I really needed? And then, cheers, drink this bread, or eat this bread and drink this cup. And I just wonder if we can't do a little bit of that today. Somewhat of a celebration of, let's lean into what God has in this place, in this communion. I know you guys all enter in different places. It may need to be somber. But I'd just like to offer that thought of, maybe as we go into this, we can enter into Jesus Christ's life, death, and resurrection and pull that into our own lives as we go here today and leave. So the band's going to play a song that they wrote, and you guys are free to engage in the communion table, and then we'll move into the rest of the service. So thanks. So I got this opportunity to kind of think a little bit about, Charlie asked me a little while back what if I would share with you guys. And so I'm excited to come and share with you. And I want you to know that Charlie, even though he's far away, is very much a present person here. He sent me an email this morning telling me that he was praying for me, and he concluded that email with the words, don't blow it. So that's my only goal tonight, it's not to blow it. So we'll try our best to have some fun with this thing. No, but truthfully, he's a great guy, and he's really excited that you guys are still here, even though he's not. So around our house, winter break, you guys all some of you students are back from winter break, and my kids went back. For those of you that have younger kids went back to school last week. So it was this shock to our system where we were used to sleeping in all day and staying up late and going skiing whenever we felt like it. And then all of a sudden it was like, no, 6 a.m., eat your mini wheats, get out the door, get your stuff, And so it was like one of those, oh my gosh, I can't believe we're doing this again already, because I was loving the Christmas break so much. But I have to tell you a couple quick stories that happened over Christmas break for me and my family, and how it kind of relates to what we're going to talk about tonight. The winter break was great. My daughter, Selah, who's 7, she really decided that this was her year to start skiing. So literally every day, she woke me up and said, are we going skiing today? And I said, Yes, we are. So we spent a lot of time skiing together, and in those trips up and down the mountain, if you've ever done this, any parents have done this for your kids, you have 1,000 pieces of equipment to grab, right? It's like season pass, jacket, helmet, goggles, boots, everything, right? And then inevitably, there's something that we forget. My oldest is getting to a place where he's kind of like, you got to do it on your own, right? Like, I can't carry all your stuff, you're big enough. And he's just like me, which probably is why I have such a hard time with this, but he's super forgetful. And he's junior high age, so it makes it, I've heard from developmental people that it makes it worse. Is that true? Someone giggled. Okay, so it's true. Ask Beth afterwards. So the kids, they're more forgetful. So Jalen, one day, we're heading out the door, we get part way up the mountain, he goes, Dad, did you grab my ski pass? I was like, no, man, why would I grab your ski pass? You're supposed to do it all, right? And he's like, oh, man. I was like, it's okay, you get one get out of jail free card, so go in and get it, we'll get it taken care of. Come home, have that day, we had this great talk. You gotta remember, systems so you don't forget stuff. This is what I have to do. Systems so you don't forget, And I'm telling my kids and they're just like this, Like, what'd I say? Okay, so it's the listening thing, right? So I tell him, the next time we're going up, you got all your stuff? He's like, yes. Okay, cool. We're about to Walmart from our house. And Jalen goes, hey, did you grab my ski boots? It's like, no, man. Why would I grab your ski boots? You said you have it all. And so we turn around, go back, get the thing, And so I'm like, goodness gracious, when is this going to set in? So, like, the kids go to school. We get them out the door. First day back, or it's probably second day back, I get this phone call as I'm walking out the door from my wife. She's at the school substituting. She goes, Jalen forgot his trombone. Can you bring it? And I'm like, no, I can't bring it because he needs to learn a lesson, right? Okay? And then I hung up the phone, like, no, I need to take it to him. That's not cool. It's a lame dad, right? So I decided I'm going to take it to him. I get down the street, I get halfway, and I'm like, supposed to have this little meeting after I drop off the trombone. And I go, forgot my wallet. So I turn around, and I'm driving home, and I'm like, Jason, you are such a hypocrite. You're like boiling over here because you're a young kid who's trying to figure this thing out and has 100,000 things to figure out to get through junior high. And here I am, almost 40, and I still forget my wallet. And so God had this quick little moment with me. He was just going, Jay, you know what? I'm faithful and I'm gracious with you. You got to do the same for the people around you. And so as I'm driving, I'm getting over there, and it's like, goodness gracious, I have to be patient. I have to be thoughtful. I have to think about these things. Because, these things that bug me about me forgetting, I impose sometimes on my little man, and that's not okay. And I would bet, in a room this size, that there's those of us, that we have the same kind of things. Stuff that bugs us about ourselves like that, or even just kind of like my kids, we're shaking our heads, listening, I got it. Come to church, sit down, I got it. Walk out the door the same way. Show up to my job, I got it. Listen to our friends and relatives and people around us that care for us and want the best for us, I got it. But here's the thing. God knew, I think, that we might need just a little more reminding. And I think He's gracious with us. And we see that throughout Scripture. We're going to go maybe a little bit. I'm kind of a young life guy. Most of you guys know that. And so we camp out on Jesus, His life, and the things He did all the time. And anytime I get asked to speak like this, I kind of just try to really pay attention to what God might have in my own life, that He's pouring into me or like wrenching on me a little bit, dialing it in, because I get the impression that our experience is somewhat similar. And if He's got a hold of me in some place, He's trying to get my ear, then He might be getting your ear a little bit too. So I just like to share a little bit of my experience, and I'm going to try to do some of that today and tie it back in. We're going to go big roundabout route. Like, you can drive to Phoenix just straight down I-17, right? Or you can drive through Sedona and go all around. We're going to kind of wiggle around a little bit today, if you're cool with that. All right? Good with that? All right, so here's where we're going to go. We're going to check out the Old Testament, Elijah in 1 Kings. So that's a little bit different. Anybody know like the story of Elijah a little bit? You can nod your heads, but he was like this really faithful, really paid attention to the Lord kind of guy. And to give you a little of the backstory before I get to where the actual part I want to talk about, where he first shows up in 1 Kings 17, and it's during the rule of Ahab. If anyone knows about Ahab, he was this terrible, bad, evil king. it says in the Bible here that he was the worst of all that came after him. So he was just like this really hectic guy. He was married to this woman named Jezebel. I think that he was kind of maybe like a passive guy that just let his wife kind of run the show for him. And so her evilness kind of like poured over into him, and he started doing all these crazy things. So anyways, he is part of this like sort of this sect of religion that would be basically kind of this, it's a pagan religion, which is pretty typical in this time. Most of the people in this time, the exile, were kind of like believed in several gods, you know? And that's why God kind of came in and said, no, you'll have no other gods before me, right? I am God. And so this was kind of a normal thing. The things that they would worship, one of the, this god of Baal, he was about rain, like the god of rain. And then also like there would be some sexual element that would be kind of weird. And so there was kind of like this thing where people would probably be a little bit drawn to this kind of religion. And so Elijah kind of shows up and says that, no, there's going to be this famine in the land. And so after he tells Ahab this, the Lord then tells him to Elijah, he says, go and hide. I'll find a place for you. I'll give you water, and the ravens will feed you. So it's kind of interesting. Ravens feed Elijah out in the wilderness. After a little while, the Lord shows up again, tells him to go hang out with this widow. So he goes to this widow's house. And this is the story you may remember where he shows up and says, make me bread. And the woman's like, my son's dying. I only have a little bit of food left to make this bread. And he assures her that if she makes it, that her flour and the oil will continually be filled up. And I was thinking about that. I mean, side note here, but isn't it cool that sometimes the Lord will just kind of say, be faithful in this one little thing, and I'll show up, I'll provide. And I think it's just a little side note, but anyways. So this happens. She keeps feeding the flour and the oil keeps showing up. I wonder, she's going, what, this is crazy? All of a sudden her son dies. And she then is mad at Elijah. Elijah then raises the guy from the dead. And then she claims God is the true God, right? So then he goes to Mount Carmel. Okay, a little history. Anyone know what goes on Mount Carmel? Kind of this situation where he shows up against all these other, the different, like, not sorcerers, but basically like prophets of Baal and Asherah, okay? And so they are like all these people, and Elijah shows up and says, you guys believe in these gods? I believe in this God. Let's figure out who's really God. And this is where they do the offerings, and the guys are trying to call down this thing to come down to fire, and it doesn't happen all day long. They cut themselves. They're trying to make this thing all happen. And then Elijah walks out, and he puts his thing on, puts the wood, the fire, and all that stuff, covers the whole thing, digs a ditch around it, covers the whole thing in water, and then asks God to light it, and it does. So he sees these amazing things happen, and God just keeps directing him, and he just keeps being faithful. And he gets to the place where Elijah prays for rain, and there's a rainstorm coming to fill the land from the famine. And that's what we're going to pick up. Sorry, kind of a long roundabout to get to where we're at. But basically, all those amazing things happened. He's out in the wilderness, he's getting fed by ravens, there's water for him, he raises this dude from the dead, he goes and performs this miracle where this water, the water can't quench the fire, and then he does this rainstorm's coming, okay? This is where we pick up. It says, when Ahab got home, he told Jezebel everything that Elijah had done, including the way he had killed all the prophets of Baal. And then Jezebel sent this message to Elijah: may the gods strike me down and kill me if by this time tomorrow I have not killed you just as you have killed them. And it says that this Elijah was afraid and he fled for his life. That's where I start shaking my head. I'm going, what? You just watched the power of God move through all these places. And all he was doing was being obedient to the little things he heard God saying. And then this woman comes up and says, I'm going to kill you for doing this miracle. And he freaks out and runs. I don't know if you guys can relate to that, but there's been times in my life where I can watch and see God working in such amazing ways. Big stuff and little stuff. And all of a sudden, one little thing can shake me, and I want to run and hide. That's what Elijah does. It says he takes off, he flees for his life, and he went to Beersheba, a town in Judah, where he left his servant there. And he went alone into the wilderness. He travels all day long. Okay, he sits down under a solitary tree, and he prays that night that he might die. He says this to the Lord. He says, take my life. I'm no better than my ancestors who have already died. And he lays down and falls asleep under this tree, hoping that he won't wake up. I don't know if any of you have ever been in such a place of so much distress, such a low place that you felt that way. But that's the way Elijah felt. And during the night, an angel shows up, kind of like God's messenger. And she says, or he or she, it doesn't say, I said she because you think about that, but it's probably, I don't know. Anyways, it's an angel. Okay, so the angel says to him, get up and eat. And he looks around, and beside his head there's some bread and some hot stones and a jar of water. So he eats and drinks, and he lays down again, falls asleep. The angel comes back and says, hey, eat some more. There's a journey long ahead of you. So he does. He gets up and he eats, and he has enough strength. He travels for 40 days and 40 nights. He's heading to this place called Mount Sinai. And this is, where the mountain of God, the place where God would dwell. And so as any good, follower of God would do at this point in time, he's like, I don't know what to do. I'm afraid. I'm lost. I'm struggling. This angel shows up. I'm going to where God is going to be. And I know that I've done that in my life where I just pursue after where God is going to be, because if I feel like I get to that place, then maybe things will make sense. And I think maybe that's what Elijah was doing. I'm not sure. It doesn't say exactly, but he gets there, and it says he climbs into a cave and he spends the night there. The Lord says to him while he's in this cave, what are you doing here, Elijah? Elijah says, I've zealously served you, God, but the people of Israel have broken their covenant with you and torn down their altars and killed every one of your prophets. I'm the only one left. Now they're trying to kill me too. And he's like, this wah, 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 sad story kind of guy, right? I get this picture that Elijah gets to this place, the mountain of God. He's so broken, so afraid, so tied up and not sure what to do, that he just climbs in this cave and hides. And I bet there's people, you guys maybe like myself, but there's places and times in your life where you've just climbed into that cave and decided that I'm just going to hide. I'm just going to stay here, protected. If I can just keep the world away at bay, then I can just be here for this moment. And it seems like that's kind of what Elijah's doing. And then all of a sudden, God says to Elijah, and he hears him. He says, go out and stand before me in the mountain. So Elijah stands, he walks out. It's almost like he's broken, but he knows just enough, and he's heard the Lord just enough, and he's seen his power happen over and over again. He goes, okay, try. So with whatever, strength he can muster, walks out onto the mountain, and he stands out there. And it says, as Elijah stood there, the Lord passed by. It was in a mighty windstorm. It hit the mountain and shook the rocks around him. And I don't know if any of you have ever been, up high on a peak of a mountain where the wind is howling, and it almost throws you over. And so I can imagine that might be what he was experiencing right here. And I wonder if he just goes, okay, this is God, this great big windstorm, And it says that windstorm passed by. And then there was a terrible blast, and the rocks were torn loose, but the Lord was not in that wind. After the wind, there was an earthquake. So he's standing there, the wind goes away, and he's not fallen down the mountain. And all of a sudden, the earth begins to shake. And I've never been in an earthquake, but probably some of you guys from Southern California have. And so you understand what that feels like. And so the earth's shaking. He's like, okay, God, you're in this, right? And then it says, no, he wasn't in the earthquake either. And after that, there was a fire. I have no clue what the fire would look like. But somehow he watched it, and he stood through it. And the fire went through, and the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, he kept standing, and there was a sound of a gentle whisper. If I look between the lines here, I wish I could hear what that gentle whisper said. What did God say to Elijah in that moment? All I do know is that there was terrible, loud, destructive forces that went forth, and God didn't speak in those. But as Elijah stood there, the still small voice, the gentle whisper, was there. And Elijah heard it. And when he heard it, he knew it was the Lord. He wrapped his face in his cloak, and he went out and he stood there at the entrance to that cave. Charlie stated this quote a little while back from John Muir that I loved. And I thought about it. John Muir is a great environmentalist, conservationist. He had a big part in helping the Yosemite National Wilderness to be around. And he said this, in this world there are no more dangerous places than home. He says, fear not the mountain passes, they will kill. Fear not the mountain passes, they will kill care, they will save you from deadly apathy, they will set you free and call forth every faculty into vigorous and enthusiastic action. When I think about that, I think about God calling me, you, us, collectively out of our caves. And we've got like real life caves we're hiding in. We're climbing up in our little apartments and shutting the doors and closing the windows and staying there. Xbox 360, whatever, just hiding away. Or it might be these figurative kind of different places of caves of fear. Or caves that I have to produce or promote or do the next thing in order to get out of this cave. And I think really God's just standing at the edge of that, whispering to us, if we'll listen just enough, incline our ear just enough. And he's saying, come out. I've got more life for you. I've got lots in store. Recently, where I kind of got to this whole thing, Charlie's talked a lot about people going up the mountain, skinning up the mountain, enjoying this stuff. And so over the holidays, I was supposed to go and skim with some guys, but I read the email wrong and I showed up a day early. So I'm staying in the parking lot by myself, kind of wondering, I guess I'll just go. So I started climbing up this hill, and it was good for me to be by myself because I knew my pace. I could just kind of chug along, you know? And I didn't have to try to keep up with anybody, and it was a nice spot. So I had some music, and I was listening to this song, and I was about to the top, and it was saying over and over, this song was saying, in the quiet, I am there. In the quiet, I am there. And all of a sudden, it's like my iPod died, the phone was gone, I pull it out, and I'm like, try to restart it, it's dead. And so I'm like, so I put it back in, and I'm just, for a quick second, it was like I climbed out of the cave for a second. I was like, okay, God, do you have something here right now in this time? Like, you're telling me in the quiet you are here. And that's when I thought of this story, and I remembered that God speaks sometimes to us in the quiet, and our lives are so loud and so hectic and so busy that we have a hard time hearing what he might have for us. So I said, Lord, what do you have right here? That morning I'd been woken up at 5 a.m. a little bit because the new year was rushing in, and I started thinking about all the to-dos, all the things I needed to happen, all the things I needed to do to be productive or successful or whatever it was. And I don't know if any of you guys can relate to that in the room, but I couldn't fall back asleep. And so that's why I ended up at the mountain. And so God says to me real clearly, he says, you know what, all those things are great, those things you're doing and the work and the hard work, but he says, there is no condemnation for those of you that are in Christ Jesus. He said that really clearly to me because I was already guilting myself about the fact that I had taken it easy over the holidays and that I haven't been working as much and all these things, right? And God says very clearly there's no condemnation for those of you that are in Christ Jesus. And I started thinking about that. It's like, I've heard that old song, it's kind of wimpy and therefore no condemnation. It wasn't that. It was almost like the stinking, I think about Lord of the Rings, where Gandalf, and he's like at that big bridge, and there's that big demon, like fire monster coming at him, and he just puts the thing down and says, you shall not pass. You know? And just like this huge Gandalf voice. I love that. And I felt like that was sort of like this, there's no condemnation. God's saying it not in this wimpy, crappy, little lame voice. It's like, no, there is no condemnation for those of you who walk with me, who follow me, who listen to my small, still voice and do what I say. Elijah was a great picture of hearing that small voice and walking in to whatever the next thing was that God was telling him to do. I want to ask a question. All of us in this room probably are hiding in different little caves. Think about what that might be. Busyness, prosperity, education, relationships, fear, worry. What is the cave that you might be hiding in? If you're not hiding in it, awesome. Go start doing something that God's telling you to do. But if you're hiding in that cave somewhere, climb out. Listen for the small voice and hear what God's saying. Elijah listened to the small things and the big things. And I feel like in my life, I try really hard to get the big things right, and I care less about the small. And I think that God cares as much about the small as the big. So we ought to start paying attention in all areas. We're going to practice that a little bit together. This might be way outside your comfort zone, and that'll be okay. If it is, sorry. One thing I love about the Commons and this community of people is that we're not about this circle only, that we're about the bigger community of Christ. And Charlie represents that every week so well by praying for another church. And we, on purpose, didn't pray for another church at the beginning because we get the impression that God has churches on you guys' hearts and minds that he would want you to pray for. Maybe more impactful, probably more impactful than Charlie or myself or anyone else standing up here could do. So I'm going to ask you for just a couple seconds. We're going to be quiet for 10 seconds. Ask the Lord, who is the church, the body, the mission, the place that you're supposed to pray for in this moment? If you're bold enough to circle up with 2 or 3 people, do that. If you're not the praying type and you want to hide, that's cool too. You don't have to say anything, okay? But I would encourage you guys to listen for 10 seconds to who is the church or the place that God's asking you to pray for. And we're going to practice this little tiny process of listening to God and then following through. Whenever the prayer starts to slow down, the worship band will take over, and we've got a few more songs for you, and then Kyle's going to close up the evening. So let me pray, and then we'll have 10 seconds or so of just quiet. Circle up with your people, pray out loud, do whatever the Lord's leading you right there, and we'll just trust in that. Father, thanks so much for this place and this time, this group of people. Father, the fact that you call us into full life with you, and the fact that you are not a God that stopped talking or communicating with us at any point in time, but that you are right here with us as you desire a relationship. You showed that through your Son, Christ. We look at this picture out of the Old Testament. We know that everything in this whole Bible points to your Son, Jesus Christ. And so we ask, Lord, to just show up right now, God. Tell us a place as a small little act of listening to you, that you would just give us a church, a place, a mission, a ministry, a body that's serving your kingdom, ushering in your kingdom here on earth. And we just pray for those. So in the quiet next little bit, we believe that your word is true. So you spoke to Elijah in the quiet. Will you speak to us in the quiet? And when you tell us how to pray and who to pray for. And like I said, if you're the praying type, step into that circle in that arena and do work. We love you, Lord.